Welcome, everybody, to America's Finest Sports. It's the start of the week. It's Monday. Tomorrow's the trade deadline in the MLB. So, all baseball fans are getting riled up, getting ready. Matt, host of Friar Talk, he's getting ready for tomorrow, hoping for Juan Soto. But of course, today we start off the day and we get a Josh Hader trade to the San Diego Padres. Now, normally Monday's shows is going to be football with Matt, Makana, Eminem, whatever you guys want to call it. But whenever there's San Diego related news, our goal is to talk about that. And so we're going to start off today's show talking about the San Diego Padres. Big time deal for Josh Hader that, myself not being, fully in tune with every single thing going on with Padres, I wasn't thinking about Josh Hader to the Padres this weekend going into the trade deadline. But for people that don't know, the trade that happened earlier today, I think it was first reported by Jeff Passan, could have been somebody else, but he says the return on Josh Hader to Milwaukee is significant. The left-handed closer Taylor Rogers, lefty pitching prospect Robert Gasser, outfielder Esteury Ruiz, and right-hander Dinelson Lamet. Sources tell ESPN, and he also brings up that Hader will be a free agent after the 2023 season. Now, Matt, you're the Padres guy. I got to hear, what is your, first reaction, first thought? Were you expecting this sort of deal? And because I know you called me, right when it happened, you called me. You're like, man, I knew the thumbnail. And I was like, I can't, I'm sorry. But what were your thoughts going through your head immediately?
So my first thoughts were that it's just interesting that it's once again a guy that hasn't been linked to AJ Preller in a long time that gets traded, because we've heard all the stuff about Juan Soto, we've heard all the stuff about Wilson Contreras and a potential Cubs trade. So what's the first trade? Of course, a guy that AJ Preller's been looking at over the past couple seasons to potentially trade for, and then just didn't get it done. And then this time around, he gets it done. Now, he is buying Josh Hader a little bit low at the deadline, but this is actually something I'm really happy that AJ Preller is doing, because in the past, a lot of the criticisms of the way AJ Preller is traded, especially around the deadline, because if you look at more of his success, it's been more offseason driven. He's been a lot better when he trades in the offseason opposed for during the season trying to make a push. And for this deal, it was he's buying low on a guy that's been a top 5 or a top 10 reliever for the entirety of his career. So I think this is a big move for the Padres. I think this is a sweet move. I like the idea of adding improving your bullpen a lot, because the Padres bullpen has been really sus as of late. Taylor Rogers had struggled a lot. And while if you look at the course of the season, he's been pretty solid. I wouldn't say good, but he's been pretty solid. He's been abysmal as of late. So adding in Josh Hader, and I'll pull up his baseball savant here in a little bit, but his numbers are pretty on par with what he's looked like throughout his career. Now, if you look at his baseball savant, I'll show it in a second, but the big thing is not a lot of spin. That's always been the case throughout his career. So it's not like he's losing part of his game or anything like that, or he's washed up. But the Padres did give up significant prospect capital. I mean, they gave up Dinelson Lamet, which is more of a contract, moving a contract so they can save a little bit of money. But then they also gave up, Robert Gasser, goes by Bob Gasser sometimes. Dude throws absolute heat. Projects to be a pretty solid starter, a really good 3-starter, I'd say, if he does, reach his potential. And then, of course, Esteury Ruiz, who has completely come on in his own this year. Very, very fast outfielder. Sorry, there's a motorcycle going by. Very, very fast outfielder. And he is someone that was the Padres' 28th ranked prospect heading into the season, and then absolutely balled out, got the call up to the MLB this year. Didn't get many at-bats, so not a big enough sample size, but he literally worked his way from AA into the MLB because of how well he played. So he had over 1,000 OPS in the minors this season so far. Stole 60 bases or something ridiculous in almost the same number of games that he had played in. So really, really impressive stuff from Ruiz. Gasser, very, very solid prospect as well. So it's not like the Padres got Josh Hader for free, but it's an upgrade that makes a lot of sense. And they didn't have to move a CJ Abrams or a guy like that for him. One other thing I'll note before I go back to you, Makana, is he also has an extra year of control when compared to Rogers. So you get the extra year of control. He's going to be on your team the rest of this year and the rest of next year, whereas Rogers would have been a free agent after the season as well. So it's a swap with significant prospect capital added to it, and some players I liked a lot in Ruiz and Gasser, but I do think overall, I think it makes a lot of sense for this team.
Yeah, I really like the move, especially from the Padres standpoint, if you're looking at it from the let's try and compete. Because if you're trying to make a move and you're sending capital for a player like Josh Hader, who over the last 3, 4, 5 seasons has been arguably the best closer in baseball, And he's been part of a pitching cast in Milwaukee that is not to be messed with. Milwaukee may not have the best roster in baseball. Obviously, when it comes to hitting, they got Yelich, they've got, Hunter Renfroe. They've got some players. I'm not trying to sleep on them. But if you go up against them in the playoffs, because they're coming out of probably the worst division in the NL, you don't want to go against them because their pitching staff is ridiculous. You go out there and you're like, okay, well, what's game one? And you go up against Corbin Burns, arguably the best pitcher in baseball, especially with Jacob deGrom out. Obviously, there's Sandy Alcantara. There's other players, but Corbin Burns, one of the best pitchers in baseball. Brandon Woodruff, another one of the best pitchers in baseball. Like that right there is a 1-2 punch of starters that could easily lock up any lineup in the MLB. Then they get you through 6, 7, sometimes 8 innings, and you're like, okay, now we got to score. Maybe we're in a 1-2 run game. We got to get it done. Well, then you come up and you're like, all right, who's this guy next? And the long blonde hair comes out and you're like, this guy may be more difficult to hit against than Corbin, who's maybe the most difficult pitcher to hit, definitely in that division, but maybe in the MLB. So like, from as an Atlanta Braves fan, and we've gone up against the Milwaukee Brewers in the last couple of seasons in the playoffs, it's been something we're like, oh no, like you don't want to go against Hader, even when Hader's struggling. Like when batters are struggling, I don't know. I feel like I'm more confident, like, oh, we can strike him out. He hasn't been hitting the ball lately. When a pitcher is struggling, I'm still terrified. Like, I don't care if Jacob deGrom in his last start gave up like 6 hits. Like, I don't care. I'm terrified. Like, oh, wow, that one guy, yeah, he got 1 bomb let against him. I don't care. Like, I'm not afraid of that. Josh Hader, his last couple of games, 3, 4, 5 games ago, he had some big outings against him, most particularly against the Giants. But he's a really good pitcher, and he's really going to help this team because of the inconsistencies as the closer. And I remember, Matt, seeing, I don't remember if it was in Discord or if it was watching probably one of your videos or just on Twitter, talking about whether or not the Padres should even go with a designated closer because of the inconsistency that Rogers has been bringing. Like, yeah, he's number 2 in saves in the MLB, but that's because the Padres every game are, they're within 1 or 2 runs because the offense just hasn't been there. So, when I'm looking at it from that standpoint, like you have your guy that can go out there and lock them up almost every time. When you're trying to beat the Dodgers, that's needed. Like you got to be able to go out there and finish a game. So I think it's great from that perspective. The other aspect is the prospects that they gave up. While they did give up, significant capital, it wasn't the capital that we've been hearing about. It wasn't the names, like you said, not bringing up Abrams. It wasn't Abrams. It wasn't Gore. It wasn't these guys that some people bring up. I know that's not the main trade offers that I've been hearing in the Soto deal potentially, but you got rid of players, but you're keeping your biggest assets as your prospects. And so I think this is a great deal for them. I'm going to be really curious to see what happens tomorrow because they do still have their top prospects. And even if they don't get themselves a Juan Soto, there's other players out there that they can potentially go for. There's a center or not a center, a catcher out in Chicago by the name of Wilson Contreras, right? I know we don't want to get rid of Mr. Let's Go San Diego.
No, we don't like that move, but I know a lot of people do.
But there's just plenty of guys, Mr. Strikeout King, Joey Gallo. There's plenty of guys that they can potentially use those picks on, or those players, not picks. They can use those prospects on. They saved them and they still added an elite player because now when you're looking at the Padres roster, when you're going in to face them, seeing Josh Hader instead of Taylor Rogers is significant. When you're trying to strategize to beat the Padres, it will make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, we start looking at this stuff. So I'm going to pull up Josh Hader's Baseball Savant just because, when you're talking about the moves and stuff, also like other corresponding moves, I think you come from a good perspective of that. The Padres can make similar moves to the Braves if they don't get Soto, and they do have all those pieces still lose significant capital, like you were saying. But I want to share my screen real quick. I want to show you guys this Josh Hader Baseball Savant page because I think this shows a lot. So take a look real quick. In July, Josh Hader had a 12.5 ERA in 11 games and 9.1 innings pitched, right? Look at his other months. 0 ERA, 0 ERA, 3.3, and he hasn't pitched today. So it's August 1st. So he had 9 rough innings. Let's say probably not even all of them were that bad. He had 5 saves in that period. So he had probably 4 rough innings, right? For people saying that he's washed, we have 269 games where he's completed 125 saves in 316 innings with under a 1 WHIP and under a 2.5 ERA. So I'm done hearing that Hader's washed and stuff. I know if you come up here, these look bad. Oh my God, 1 percentile on barrel, 1% or 8 percentile on fastball spin. But check this out. Barrel was not the same, but the fastball spin was down, right? All right, let's go 2019. Barrel 1% again. Hard hit is still 9 percentile. Let's see what he looked like in 2019. Maybe not his best year, but 3.79. Like let's go back a couple years. It's pretty similar. The hard hit goes down, but the barrel still very low. Fastball spin still very low. So like the areas that like he's got worse in, he hasn't really changed. So he's only 28 years old. You have him for another year. You could potentially re-sign him after that. I just don't get the talk about Josh Hader being washed in this deal. I don't really think it makes much sense at all. So I'm pumped for this move. And I think one of the things we were kind of talking about, or you were talking about a little bit, is like more of like being uncomfortable as a Braves fan when you have to go out and play against Josh Hader. Well, as a Padre fan this year, and especially over the last couple months, we're like the feeling of the game is I feel really comfortable maybe the first 7 innings of a game, especially if you have a guy like Darvish, Musgrove. I mean, maybe not 7 innings, maybe like 5 innings of Snell as of late. But like Clevenger, he's been pitching really well, but not super long. But a lot of the stars have been really good, right? You feel really confident in the beginning part of that game. But when you get into the 8th and 9th inning as a Padre fan, it's been terrifying because you don't know what to expect. And so for me, going and adding a guy in Josh Hader is a great move, very under the radar move, not really talked about much. But I really like the move. I think it was really smart. I think you're giving up a decent amount, and like I think you might feel those prospects go. Like I think Ruiz or Gasser or both might end up being sweet players one day. But when you look back on this for where the Padres are at in the season and them trying to push to make a playoff run, I do think it makes sense. So I'm overall pretty happy with the move. But like you were saying, with the remaining prospects they have, if they do want to keep pushing towards that, like the Braves did last year, you don't have to go and trade all your top end guys to go and hit this crazy home run. So we'll see where the Padres are at. The Soto stuff, I mean, we've talked about it a ton on our channel, but hard to tell right now. But the Padres are definitely still in it apparently. So that's kind of all I got on Josh Hader though.
Yeah, when I'm looking at Josh Hader and when I'm looking at pitchers in general, he's in the month of July. What's also in the month of July? The All-Star break, the big, the breakup in the MLB season. Pitching in baseball, and honestly just baseball in general, is very different from a lot of other sports because if you get traded in football, your skill set's going to be the exact same. Baseball is extremely based on the mental aspect of the game, and especially pitching, right? We hear about pitchers getting, the yips. They start being unable to throw. We hear about catchers getting the yips. They can't throw to second base. They can't throw to third base or first base, whatever it is. So in those types of situations, sometimes a change of scenery can be good. Now, sometimes a change of scenery can also be bad. But I'm not worried about his poor July because there are players in baseball that are streaky. There are, and we brought up the numbers from, early in this year. That was when he was hot, and he had a 0 ERA through 2 months of baseball. There's a lot of streaky guys in the MLB, and a lot of considered are arguably the best players in the MLB. Tatis, Acuna. These are 2 superstars that everyone says, oh, wow, they're just so good. Tatis has weeks where he's batting terribly and he's not hitting. But then the next week he'll come back, or the next month he'll come back and he'll hit 2 home runs in a game in critical spots and they'll win. It can be the same with pitching. You can get hot and cold, and that's all right because, one, he's not even playing for a team when he's cold. So they're going to get him, and they're going to try to get him back on track. But they need him hot for October. They need him hot when he's going up against the Dodgers, when they're, because I think the Padres right now are in a good spot to make the playoffs. They'll probably be in the wild card game. They'll probably go against a difficult team to play in the wild card, whether it's the Mets or the Braves or, the Brewers. We don't really know, but they're now in a situation where if they can get him back on track, which they have a couple of months to do so, it's going to be really scary because I don't want to go up against Joe Musgrove, not get a hit, and then all of a sudden be like, all right, we got a chance in the ninth, and then Hader steps onto the mound because it's not going to go well for any team, really. Like who would, if you're going and you're the Padres and you have three guys, bottom of the ninth, tie game against the LA Dodgers, and you got Mookie, you got Freeman, and you got Trey Turner coming up. Do you want Taylor Rogers going up there, or do you want Josh Hader? Who do you want? Who do you want to get through the side?
It's as easy as it gets. Like, that's the thing. Like, that's why I was so concerned with that. That was one of the areas I was really concerned. I thought they were going to add a right-handed reliever. I still think they might. But in terms of like where my concerns are at, I think like, yeah, you could maybe talk a little bit, not a little bit. You could talk a lot about the offensive struggles, but like in the way that they're losing right now, like they're usually losing from blowing leads. And they're not. The problem is they don't come back from wins. Like, they score a couple runs and they have to bank on their starters and bullpen to get it done. So if you don't have a good closer, like it really starts like messing up your win totals. And that's what we've seen in the last month or so. Like, the Padres have not been as good. But also, if you throw in how many games that a guy in the bullpen or Taylor Rogers has blown the game, then you're like, okay, we could have like 10, 15 more wins in like the last certain amount of period, probably like 10 wins, And so that goes a long way over the course of an MLB season. It would have been nice to have Hader at the beginning of the year. Maybe not for July though. Apparently,
maybe against the Diamondbacks.
Yeah,
but let's get out of the Josh Hader news, the San Diego news, and let's just start talking about some overall NFL, because right now is this Thursday we've actually got the NFL Hall of Fame game. I'm pretty excited for it because we get to see some young players go after it. We've got the Raiders, we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars, but right now training camp is starting. A lot of teams are throwing on the pads for the first time, and we really get to start seeing these positional battles take place. Let's talk about who you think will be in these positional battles. And I think this thing is wrong, because I'm pretty sure we're not supposed to be talking about training camp battles. We're supposed to be talking about breakout candidates this year. So let's turn off.
Let's talk about breakout candidates. I think that's more
okay. Let's talk about breakout candidates. We'll get rid of the thing. That was pretty funny. I'm talking and I'm like, wait a minute. We
changed the topics at the last second. That was why.
Yeah, let's talk about some breakout candidates in the NFL right now, because there's a lot of players, but I want to bring a guy to the table so that Matt can't, because
we already got a comment. We already got a comment about a guy. Breakout candidates. So I think, I don't think we should just start with Lance. I really don't. But if I'm looking at breakout candidates, the first position I'm going to go to is second-year quarterback. That is always what you start out with, because one, that's the most high-profile position, but also we see that a lot of rookie quarterbacks look completely lost and they look in shambles. And sometimes it's not necessarily second-year quarterbacks, but guys that have been in the league for a couple of years, they will have that crazy breakout season.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some guys, it's the second year in Mahomes where he's benched. Other guys like Josh Allen or Lamar, because he plays a little bit and then he has that breakout in the second year. Or it could be a guy like Josh Allen, for instance, where Josh Allen when he starts as a rookie, he plays a couple years, not that great, and then all of a sudden gets to star receiver and just blows up and becomes an amazing quarterback, maybe one of the best quarterbacks in the league. Like, guys have him a lot of times top 3 in the league. Like, he's that kind of guy, and he's the number 1 overall fantasy pick as well. So I don't know. I think that second-year quarterbacks is a big spot for me. Now, I will let you go first because, of course, the guy I'm going to talk about a lot. I think that's pretty clear with the posters behind me. But who stands out to you as a second-year quarterback that's going to make a big surge? Or do you not think this, extraordinary quarterback class is going to live up to expectations?
I think there's going to be 2 surges, and I think one's going to be a lot bigger than the other. But I want to talk about the guys that I don't think will really surge. I think Mac Jones is going to be about the same as he was last year. They didn't really get any weapons. They got, Devontae Parker, who I think is pretty solid. But with Mac Jones, I think it'll be decent. They'll be with Belichick. They'll win some games. That's about it. Trevor Lawrence, I love Trevor Lawrence. I still think Trevor Lawrence is going to be a superstar in the NFL. I think he's going to be a multiple-time Pro Bowler. I think he's going to make the playoffs plenty of times in his career. But I'm sorry, Christian Kirk is not making that happen. I think he'll be better, but he's not going out there and having this is not Josh Allen getting Stephon Diggs and improving his arm. It's like Lamar Jackson, his rookie year still, but just adding in Sammy Watkins. Like you're not getting much difference. But I think the first one is I'll talk about Lance second. I'm gonna go with Zach Wilson because I really like what the Jets did this offseason. And I don't think Zach Wilson's going to turn out to be a Hall of Fame quarterback. If he does, props to him. I'm not rooting against the guy. But he's added some weapons over there in New York, and he has another year of experience. And he was not someone that I looked at getting drafted as being, okay, his rookie year, he's going to dominate. Because some guys, like you're like, okay, they played against great competition. They've got the arm, they've got the skill set. Guys like Herbert, guys like Burrow, Kyler. Like it was pretty clear for a lot of people where it's like, okay, they're going to come in, they're going to look all right. They're going to be okay. Zach Wilson was, okay, he's coming out of BYU. The teams at BYU were always atrocious around him. He didn't really have any help. So what's going to happen? And he came out last year and he had to play in a system that Sam Darnold got ruined in. He had to go against Belichick. He had to go against the Bills. He had to go against the Dolphins, and he really struggled. But now, Zach Wilson, he's played another year in the NFL, or he's played a year in the NFL. And it seems like with everything that went on in the offseason, obviously it's funny. It's hilarious. Zach Wilson, his mom's best friend, all that stuff is funny. The thing that doesn't get talked about is when stuff like that happens, you just become, the cool guy, right? It's like in in elementary school and high school, like, in those movies, the kid has sex with the teacher and everyone's like, that dude's awesome. Zach Wilson has become that. We saw their tight end walking in with a Zach Wilson GOAT t-shirt or something like that. Like that was the type of thing that he's bringing into. Like I feel like there's some sort of culture. Whether or not it's a good thing, the basis of it was good. But I feel like, okay, people are going to ride with this guy. They drafted Breece Hall, the best running back in the draft. They have Garrett Wilson, who I think is really solid. Elijah Moore, I really liked last season. I feel like he's going to be a lot better than he was last year. Do I think he's going to be a Pro Bowler in his second year? No. But him being an okay starter is a massive jump for him because last year it wasn't good, but I didn't expect him to be good. They got him weapons, and now I feel like he can take that, that stride to being okay, maybe he can have a chance. I think after this year, Jets fans will still have faith in him, which for Jets fans after 2 years of a quarterback, that's a jump. But now getting into Lance.
Can I talk about Wilson a little bit?
Yeah, go for it.
So, because I kind of like this take, and he's not going to be my top like rookie quarterback to have a breakout. But I mean, if we're looking at the situations of a lot of these guys, everyone wants to praise Mac Jones' situation and stuff. Mac Jones' situation is worse than Zach Wilson's this year. I don't really think it's that close because he lost his offensive coordinator. And let's not act like Mike LaFleur isn't a good offensive coordinator. He was drawing some sweet plays last year. Now, the Jets were not good, but LaFleur looked pretty solid, in my opinion, with not being able to work with too much. They had a first-round wide receiver. They shore up the offensive line quite a bit. There's still going to be some question marks, but they're going to run the football probably pretty well. Their offensive line is built to run the football too, and they have a system that I think that they could be a pretty like sneaky good offensive system for Zach Wilson. Now look around at some other teams. There's teams that are better, and then there's teams that are horrible, like the Jags and the Bears. So I definitely think it's like kind of middle of the pack in terms of situations for a guy. So I do think that's going to help him a lot. As the player, he's all right. I don't think he's crazy good. I don't think he's bad, but he's okay.
I think that's definitely fair. Like I'm not expecting him to come out, like I said, and be Justin Herbert year 2, Joe Burrow year 2, or anything like that. But I think he could come out and he could be competent. But next up is definitely Trey Lance, because Trey Lance got to sit out a year, and for some reason, I don't know why people don't learn this. This used to be the way every quarterback came into the league. It was like you draft him, he sits, you start him his second year. Maybe the starter gets hurt and he starts week 6 or 7 or something like that. But most guys, used to come in and it would take a while. Even if they were the number 1 overall pick, it was like, okay, you back up for 4 weeks, then you'll come in. We saw that with Baker Mayfield. Came in and Tyrod Taylor started. We saw that with Justin Herbert. Came in, Tyrod Taylor started. For some reason, Tyrod Taylor has a theme. But Trey Lance comes in, and he's got Jimmy Garoppolo there. there was nothing the Niners could do. Well, they could have traded him for a second round pick, but they got greedy. And unfortunately, they couldn't do that. So they had to wait him. And for them trying to win that year, probably Garoppolo might have been the better option to try and really contend that season. He got them to the NFC Championship game. But if they wanted to win long term, they knew it was Lance. It's just like when the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes. Alex Smith, they were like, we know Alex Smith can get us to the playoffs and get us to, do all right. Well, he didn't, but they tried. But like he had been to the playoffs multiple times. They were like, hey, let's see Patrick Mahomes work in the system, learn it, because Andy Reid is difficult. You do not want to be a rookie in Andy Reid's system as a quarterback. It's a very tough system. He learns it, and all of a sudden he comes out and everyone's like, this guy's the greatest quarterback ever. But after that first year, it was like, okay, Mahomes, yeah, we've heard some things in camp, but like he wasn't starting over Alex Smith. Alex Smith isn't very good. Alex Smith, yeah, he's an average quarterback that can win you some games, but he doesn't really push the ball downfield. He kind of checks it down a lot. What does that sound like? Jimmy Garoppolo. Trey Lance isn't Patrick Mahomes, but the guy he was sitting behind is very similar to the guy Patrick Mahomes sat behind. And the situation, I think, is pretty similar. I think he's going to do great, and he's got weapons, he's got a scheme, he's got a system, and he's got experience. Matt, you can take it away. You can talk about Lance more.
Yeah. So I think it's funny that you bring up Alex Smith too as the guy, because like that was the former kind of bridge. I know he got drafted by the Niners and wasn't truly a bridge, but at the time he was a bridge to Kaepernick. That's the same dude, which is just funny to me because now we're talking about another 49er, right? So I was huge on Trey Lance coming out of North Dakota State. I've been super pumped about him. I have a Trey Lance jersey. I love the film. Now, I think the thing that we have to remember is that Trey Lance is still an extremely raw player. So I don't know if this is his breakout year. I'll be completely honest. And I've so far in practice, and I get it's early training camp, the reports have been really bad. They've been really bad. Like he went like 3 of 14 the other day in practice. Like it's been rough. Now, when I watched Trey Lance last year, I knew he was going to be super raw, but I liked a lot of what I saw. Now, fast forward, we're seeing like how he's adjusted some of the mechanics. A lot of stuff seems very positive. Last year, he had a finger issue that definitely screwed up a lot of his accuracy, his ability to hit guys in stride and stuff. And we would see that in the games. You would definitely see him kind of look a little rough, make a few mistakes early on in the game. But the thing that stood out to me the most was how he looked in the first half versus how he looked in the second half. When he would really start getting comfortable and just start letting it rip and would start booting out and setting up, he would have big throws. His second half numbers were significantly better. And when he would play, he would progressively get better. Also, each start, he would get better. So I don't know if this is technically is truly going to be like his breakout year. I'm really excited about the future. I love the potential, but as a player right now, he is still he's an extremely raw player. He's probably not going to hit 65% of his passes this year, which is a number that you're trying to hit, right? So I think he's going to maybe not have the highest completion percentage. However, in terms of maybe how we evaluate as a quarterback, it might not be the best, but in terms of for the 49ers, dude, he should immediately make them better because Jimmy Garoppolo was not good last year. Jimmy Garoppolo, now he had some good moments in week 18 against the Rams. He was slicing and dicing the Rams defense. He looked pretty solid. But come playoff time, when the 49ers were banged up and stuff, Jimmy wasn't great. So I do think that Lance is definitely going to be a guy a great quarterback in the future. I think everything is set up for him, but I don't necessarily know if that's going to be this year. Now, that doesn't mean I'm knocking the Niners. The Niners are still an extremely slept on team, even with that. But I'm super pumped for Lance, but he's 22 years old right now. Coming out of North Dakota State, only started 3 games. So I don't know if it's this year necessarily. I think it's, I know you bring up Mahomes, and of course we're going to talk about Mahomes and Allen. I know it's not fair to compare Lance to them, but those are the guys you want to be. Those are the players you want to become. So if we're looking at it timeline-wise, I think it's going to look a little bit more like Josh Allen. I think it's going to take some time before he really starts being able to be a super consistent quarterback. But the high play, the ability to change the offense and make adjustments, and we're going to talk about Deebo Samuel a little bit, but being able to use all your pieces in such a different way is going to be huge for the 49ers. So I think we're going to see a lot of flashes this year, but I think we might see some games where we're going to see Lance go out there and just it might look rough at times. But I'm not going to panic. I'm going to be very patient with Lance because I think it's going to take a little bit. But I think in a few years, we're going to be like, holy shit, this guy is a monster. This guy is sick. This is the prototypical Kyle Shanahan quarterback. So I'm super excited for the future, but I don't know if I'm kind of pumping the brakes a little bit on his performance this year. I still think the Niners are going to be good, but I'm going to be like wary coming into the season. You know, I don't want to get too pumped up over a guy that probably shouldn't be maxed out in terms of his potential for at least a couple years.
So we're talking about the 49ers system coached by Kyle Shanahan. This will be Trey Lance's first year starting in the Kyle Shanahan system. There's a certain, I don't know, statistical trend that goes on with Kyle Shanahan systems in their second year starting. It's very similar to Bruce Arians and second year quarterbacks in their new system and how they do in their starting. Next year, not this year, Trey Lance should be pretty good. But this year, all he has to do is get it to Deebo or Kittle and let them run through 7 guys, and you're going to get yards down the field. He can throw the ball to the sideline. He can throw the ball over the top, and he adds that extra element of running the football. It may take 5, 6, 7 weeks, but once he gets really comfortable, I think he's going to be the 49ers offense is going to be moving. But he's someone that I'm really excited to watch. But let's move out of the quarterbacks. I'll kind of mention a guy that I feel like is going to absolutely have a breakout year that's not talked about nearly enough as he should be, and that's Rashad Bateman. Because Rashad Bateman last year looked phenomenal. He doesn't get talked about because the Ravens lost about every game when Rashad Bateman was playing because Tyler Huntley was the quarterback. But Rashad Bateman was clearly better than Hollywood Brown. And Hollywood Brown, I know he gets slandered. He's not a bad wide receiver in the NFL. He is a solid player. It's very different. The way he gets talked about, you would think that he's like, you can't dare to have him on your field. You don't want him as your number one, I can tell you that. But he's a solid wide receiver. And Rashad Bateman came in, and his route running was phenomenal. And he was able to do things that most rookie wide receivers aren't able to do. It just wasn't able to be seen on the highlight reel because Tyler Huntley couldn't get him the football. In practice, all the time, you hear about the Ravens, and they're like, Bateman just cooked Marlon Humphrey. He just cooked Marcus Peters. He just cooked this guy. He just cooked this guy. He just mossed this guy. Now he gets Lamar Jackson, his wide receiver, or his quarterback, and he's been working with Lamar in the offseason. They're in the first ever or the first practice open to the public at the stadium this weekend. He went out and caught a double coverage catch with Lamar Jackson deep down the field in between 2 guys stretching out, which is exactly what he worked on all offseason. This guy is now going to be able to put up the wide receiver numbers that Lamar Jackson has been needing because he doesn't have the drop problem Hollywood had. And he's going to get open. He's going to create space. And he's going to be very, very good opposite Mark Andrews. And he will get talked about like Jalen Waddle got talked. I'm not saying he's not Jamar Chase. He's not going to get talked about like Jamar Chase. But the way Jalen Waddle was talked about, everybody was like, Jalen Waddle is so freaking good. He's so unbelievably crazy. He's incredible. Rashad Bateman is a filthy route runner with great hands, and he can move when he has the ball in his hands, and he can move before he catches the ball. This dude is an absolute stud. And people need to stop acting like the Ravens don't have a wide receiver one. Now you guys can talk. People can say their wide receiver core sucks. I'm fine with that. They don't really have a 2 or a 3 or a 4. That's yet to be determined, but they have a 1.
Wait,
and they have a pro.
They got a 3. They got Duvernay's a fine 3. I'm fine with him being
okay.
3.
Yeah. We can throw Duvernay.
They don't got a 2. They really don't. I mean, the thing is, okay, but the thing is, they're gonna run a lot of 2 tight end sets. Like when I'm looking at the Ravens, I think Bate's awesome. He's a sweet player. If I'm looking at all the second year wideouts, I mean, there's a couple guys I really like, but Bateman's one of the guys highest on the list, just especially in terms of fantasy too, just because he's going to get a high volume. Like he's going to get a lot of passes to him. Now, the true number 1 in the offense is still going to be Mark Andrews, but I think Bateman is your 2 in terms of like your offense. And also, who's the tight end that you guys just drafted, Makana?
Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, Isaiah Likely. That's probably going to be your tight end too. So you're going to run a lot of personnel where you have 2 tight ends and then 2 wideouts. So I'm fully expecting the Ravens to do a lot of stuff where they have only Duvernay and Bateman on the field. So I think he's going to get a ton. I mean, he's a third down monster, dude. Because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people compare him to Keenan Allen just because of his like ability to get open. You see, I showed a little like I think it was like the ESPN video when he got drafted just a second ago. But dude, he creates a lot of separation. He was a sick player at Minnesota. He was so good coming out. I was super pumped for him. So I like Bateman a lot. I think he's going to be a really really good player. I love him. A couple other receivers too, and I want to know what you think about these guys. But Kadarius Toney, Brandon Ayuk, what do you think about them? Now they have very similar molds too, which is funny because it's like super lanky. Oh, I'm just gonna destroy man coverage. A little bit different than Bateman, who's like, I don't know. He's kind of there, but he's more of like a little bit smaller, like little like shorter. I feel like than them. But I don't know. What do you think about Toney and Ayuk? I know that it's kind of weird for the Giants just because they've sucked. But I like what they're bringing in terms of the coaching staff, and I think Toney could take off there. I already talked a bunch about Lance, but the thing with Lance is that Ayuk has kind of been up and down like throughout his career, but they've basically every report has been that he's been completely locked in and he looks like a superstar, which is very similar to reports that were coming out about Deebo Samuel last year. If you guys want to take because the Niners players, they'll praise the guys that deserve to get praise. Like the guys that get hype so far in the Kyle Shanahan era have been the guys that have deserved to get hype. So I'm really pumped about Ayuk. I think he's going to be probably the number one receiving threat just with how they're going to use Deebo. And which is kind of crazy because you got Deebo and Kittle. And I do think that I honestly believe that in terms of target volume. But yeah, I mean, what about him and of course Kadarius Toney, who looks like he can't get touched on a football field sometimes?
I think it's downright ridiculous that a lot of Giants fans have like given up on Kadarius Toney. Like, there's so many people that I see, and they're like, Kadarius Toney's just not that good, and I'm like, what? What are you talking? Like, have you ever watched this guy play? And maybe they look at the overall stat numbers, but like, I swear, you throw this guy a bubble screen and he makes 6 guys miss. Maybe he only gets 3 yards, but you're watching him and you're like, this guy deserves to be on a football field. Like, get this guy the ball. And it's the same thing with Brandon Ayuk. I mean, this guy is special, when he has the ball in his hands. And the issue last year, Jimmy Garoppolo could not figure out how to get the ball from his hands to Brandon Ayuk's hands because Ayuk was in this, I don't know, Jimmy Garoppolo kind of sees it as this mystical land called outside the numbers. Ayuk was there. He was open. The ball was not there because Jimmy Garoppolo could not get it there.
Dude, the game that killed me was the Cowboys playoff game. Brandon Ayuk is cooking Trayvon Diggs all game. Because you know how Diggs is. Diggs is a very big-time risk-reward kind of player. Dude, he got, like, missed. Like, there was one play that he caught the ball, picked up, like, 30 yards. It would have been a 70-yard touchdown if it wasn't thrown, like, literally out of bounds. And then, like, the rest of the game, he's cooking them. Fucking overthrown. Like, it was just so bad, dude. But that's okay. The thing is, with Toney, I don't know how Giants fans are giving up on him, but I do kind of wonder if you might see a little bit of that with Toney too. Like, that was the problem, But I don't know. I'm stoked for both of them. Any other guys though that you're thinking?
Yeah, I have one other guy because he's got a quarterback now that can throw the deep ball. He's got the best deep ball thrower in the NFL. Russell Wilson throws the deep ball better than anyone. And now he's got a very good, speedy, deep threat in KJ Hamler. KJ Hamler coming out of Penn State, I looked at him and I was like, man, they got him and Judy. That's a duo. They also, obviously, they had Sutton when they dropped. But I was like, that right there, like, that could be a future duo right there without Sutton. It could be deadly. Then they both walk into the building and Drew Lock's throwing the ball, and they're like, okay, maybe not. KJ Hamler now has a quarterback that can get him that deep ball. And he's going to get behind a lot of defenses, and he's going to be in a lot of shootouts. I talked about it before. You don't want to be in a shootout with Russell Wilson. Why? Because I swear to everything, anytime you run a close game against Russell Wilson, he does that stupid moon ball, and Chris Collinsworth is like, in a moon ball. And, he's talking about, he's like, the way Russell Wilson throws them, I call them moon balls. He says about 55 times. Every time it happens, boom, right into Tyler Lockett's arms, right into DK Metcalf's arms, right into Doug Baldwin's arms, whoever it is at the wide receiver spot, that's going to be KJ Hamler. It's not going to be Judy. There could be some plays to Sutton. I don't want to count him out. There could be some plays to Tim Patrick, but the speed of KJ Hamler is going to get behind a lot of defenses. And imagine Russell Wilson playing in Denver. That moon ball is going. That may go to the moon. I mean, that thing's going 80 yards every single time, and KJ Hamler is going to run right underneath it. He's going to be seen as one of the best deep threats in all of football this year. And he is. I bet if you look up a top 10 deep threats in football, he's not mentioned. Like he's not mentioned whatsoever, and he's going to be up there, and he's going to be really scary for a lot of teams.
I'm going to go a little bit different direction with you with this because I like where you're going at with it, but I'm not going to say KJ Hamler. I'm not going to say Jerry Jeudy. I'm going to say all of the dudes. They don't get talked about enough. Like that wide receiver core is so dirty. You have players that really work well together. You have a guy in KJ Hamler that has a very good knack for getting open. Did at Penn State, I think. He came out of Penn State, right?
Yeah.
That's why I was pretty sure. Yeah, you got him coming out of Penn State, right? You got Jerry Jeudy, who's definitely the way more high-profile guy. So it might even be hard to call it a breakout season just because of the expectations for Jerry Jeudy were so high. But you have like NFL breakout, yes. But you have Jerry Jeudy, amazing at getting open, right? KJ Hamler, he can take the top off the defense. Tim Patrick, all around kind of like third down, like big target, goes and makes like big time catches, a physical receiver. And then you have Sutton, who right now is probably the best of the bunch because he is just an all-around stud. He's a prototypical outside receiver that is going to go up, make plays with anyone, and is going to be a similar player to DK Metcalf, believe it or not. Now, DK is much bigger than him, but the plays that he's going to make are going to be a little bit reminiscent of that. All four of those guys are sick. All four of those guys are going to match up with anyone's corners, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do because those guys are going to consistently beat you, which is going to be scary with Russell Wilson. Now, we can also look and go, okay, well, they're going to run the ball a lot. Yes, they're going to run the ball a lot. So I don't know if that's why I'm not expecting them to all break out just because they're going to be good players running the football. But in terms of like coaching staffs really being like, damn, dude, this is going to be, our work is cut out for us tonight. I think you're going to start hearing a lot of that throughout the NFL over the next couple years with this just extremely dirty receiving core, dude. Because if you're a defense, you're looking at that going, well, if we try to stop this guy, there's three other guys. Like, and that's the thing. I don't think a lot of people really know KJ Hamler's name, so that might be why. But KJ Hamler, like, he's up there with the other guys, I believe. I think he's going to be thought of it like that. So they got four guys that are legit NFL wideouts. That's probably as deep as it gets. Like going into last year, you know, people were super hyped on the Cowboys receiving core. This one's better. This one is probably better, at least deeper. Which is why the Cowboys receiving core is so sick. So I don't know, man. This is going to be a nasty team, I think. I think the Broncos are really scary.
Yeah, I think that's kind of it I had. I was going to talk about Juju, but it's more of a resurgence than it is a breakout because Big Ben and, you know, worse than Jimmy Garoppolo at throwing the football, which is tough to do. But let's get into the final segment, and I believe we actually got this one correct. Deebo Samuel extension, because Deebo Samuel, if people do not know, he was extended by his hold-in is over. Matt, you're the 49ers fan. What do you think about this deal, keeping Deebo in San Francisco? How crucial is it to the future success of this team?
So this is a big deal because you want Deebo to be here with Lance. We were just talking about how Lance might be kind of raw coming out, and I talked about, comparing him a little bit to Josh Allen in terms of like the timeline. Well, one of the big things with the Josh Allen timeline was that they were able to go out and get Stephon Diggs. Well, the 49ers already have their all-star caliber receiving core out there with George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, a couple other good complementary players like Juwan Jennings, a good run game, right? They already got that. Deebo Samuel, they needed to get it done because Deebo Samuel was the heart and soul of the team last year. He was a monster player, and now he's getting paid a good amount. I think the contract makes perfect sense. It's 3 years, $71 million, and then the guarantees were $58 million. So he's making I think it's like just under 24 for his average salary. It's similar to the AJ Brown, the DK Metcalf contract. I think AJ Brown tweeted out the other day that look, we all got the same deal. So basically, kind of taking a shot at the Titans, we all got the same deal, man. These guys were just tripping, and that's why they traded me. It said, fly, Eagles, fly, or something like that. But just wanted to basically say, look, we all end up getting basically the same thing in the end. So it's the market. In terms of like the structure of it, I do like the structure because there's a potential out after 2024. And they'd have 15 million dead cap, but in case something had, right? Because the big thing with Deebo is just the way he's been used. It's a very physical way. And we've seen him already go through a few injuries. And even though last year he didn't like miss much like any time really with injuries, you could see that he was banged up throughout the season. Like he definitely was. Now, I don't think you're going to see the inside carry volume that we saw last year because that was a little bit absurd. But this dude literally put the team on his back. And if you're looking at like offensive players that were just absolutely remarkable last season, you have to include Deebo Samuel with that. I get that Cooper Kupp broke the receiving record. There's also another game. That's one thing. And also, Deebo Samuel was working with nothing, where Cooper Kupp was working with a guy in Matthew Stafford that is extremely underrated and consistently throughout his career has, really like helped his wide receivers have monster numbers. You look at Megatron, right? Well, Megatron's Megatron, but then also when you add in Matthew Stafford to the mix, he puts up, he breaks the record. Well, Kenny Golladay was also a complete monster with Matthew Stafford and Cooper
By the way,
Kupp.
he didn't break the record. He was like 50 yards short. Almost, though.
Okay, almost.
He won the Triple Crown, which is maybe more impressive.
Yeah. So, I mean, and we knew that he was just like a guarantee to just be a complete animal every year. He was insane. So yeah, Cooper Kupp's been fantastic, but Deebo Samuel deserves to be talked about. And when we're talking about last year, like the highest, performers, it is Deebo Samuel because there's like 8 to 10 plays last year where legitimately where the 49ers season is about to end. Deebo goes and tells Kyle, "Hey Kyle, give me the rock." And then Deebo literally comes in and scores a 50-yard touchdown, 80-yard touchdown. Like he was doing that every single week. It was incredible. So like for me as a fan, there was not a better player that I've seen. Like probably the only offensive season where I've like really watched the team and stuff has been like maybe like LT seasons, right? Where I've been like, oh my God, like I've been watching LT just absolutely tear people apart. Deebo was up there in that. Like there's other guys too. There's a lot of guys. There's Megatron, right? There's guys like that. And I think you can talk about Cooper Kupp, like definitely. I mean, he had an extraordinary season. But if we're going to talk about last year's top offensive performers, Deebo Samuel is definitely in that conversation because of just the explosive plays in the perfect moments every single week. As a Niner fan, like I was saying, like it was just crazy to watch, but I literally would feel like, all right, seasons, we have to score a touchdown this drive. And then Deebo goes in the backfield and you go, hell yeah, touchdown. You sit back and then Deebo scores a touchdown. It was like routine at the end of the season. It was crazy. And even in the Rams game where they get knocked out, he had like a 60-yard touchdown run, like or 40-yard touchdown run. It was just what a remarkable season. So he deserved all the money. He was the 49ers' best player last year, and you're talking about a lot of elite guys on that team as well. And they basically changed their offensive scheme to be the Deebo scheme because Jimmy Garoppolo couldn't get his job done in terms of getting the ball to his wideouts. Now, to be fair to Jimmy, he was pretty banged up at the end of the year, but still, like Deebo literally put the team on his back. So I love it. In terms of what it looks like as a contract, I think it makes a lot of sense. It's only a 3-year extension. When the deal is over, he will be finishing his age 29 season, so he could potentially re-up somewhere. He could potentially get cut after age 28 season, but I think this is one where we should see the deal come through. Like it should go to the end, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up going somewhere else after a year or if he re-ups another big contract. But I think this is a big dub for both sides because Deebo's going to put up the best numbers in his career in San Francisco, and he gets a chance to work with Kyle Shanahan for 3 more years now. And I think that's a scary thing for the rest of the NFC.
Yeah, I think what you brought up at the end is the perfect point. He gets to be with Kyle Shanahan, and Kyle Shanahan gets to be with Deebo. That is the best pairing that you can have between wide receivers and offensive coordinators. You can say quarterback and Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, that may be a little bit better, but Shanahan and Deebo is perfect. Shanahan gets guys in space. Deebo runs over people in space. That is how it works. That is how the Niners offense was run last year, and that's how it's going to be continued to run because they have Deebo, they have Ayuk, and they have George Kittle. They also have Trey Lance, who could drop the shoulder. I don't know how much a lot of people would love him dropping the shoulder and running people over, but Deebo Samuel gets to come into this, this kind of new era in San Francisco with a new quarterback where they're trying to really become something. And he gets to do that with the best possible person, Kyle Shanahan. And I get that he wanted a lot of money coming after last year because, Matt, like you said, oh, he should be in this conversation. If somebody does not have Deebo Samuel in the best offensive performances, as a season last year, I don't think they watched a single San Francisco 49ers game. They didn't watch a single highlight of a 49ers game.
Dude, I'm being serious, dude. People don't talk, like, people act like his season wasn't that crazy. Like, oh yeah, he ran the ball well. It's like, dude, you don't understand, man. Like, his percentage of scoring a touchdown on a run play was fucking crazy. Like, it was insane how often he would score. It was nuts. It was crazy.
It was like Deebo Samuel lines up into the backfield, and it was just like, oh no. Like when you have a player that plays wide receiver and they line up in the backfield and you're more scared of when he was lining up at wide receiver, that is showing how good he is, right? Like he is someone where he is dominant as a wide receiver. And I don't think people really recognize that him in his second season. People that, were watching the 49ers, they were like, okay, this Deebo guy, like he's good. Now, was he the player he was last year? No, but he was good. He was physical. He got the ball in space. You could live with him as being, one of your wide receivers going forward in the NFL. Now he's a player where Shanahan has gone, wow. If I don't have this guy, there is zero people that I can replace him with and be able to do the same thing. That's what Shanahan wants to do, right? He wants to get the best value to put him in there. Why did the 49ers draft Javon Kinlaw over CeeDee Lamb? Because Shanahan looked at it and he said, you know what? This Brandon Ayuk guy, for what I'm trying to do, is just about the same as CeeDee Lamb with the ball in his hands. So we can get him late in the first round and get Kinlaw. Unfortunately, injuries,
let's not talk about
chronic
Kinlaw,
pain. Right? But overall, he wants to get like those perfect guys. There's nobody in the NFL like Deebo. He is a unicorn, a term overused in the NBA, not used in the NFL. He's a unicorn. His ability to catch the ball and run the ball at a high rate is unparalleled in the modern NFL. So now that you have a player that can do these things, you can't let him go if you're Kyle Shanahan, because you can't get that back. You can't draft a guy. You can't trade for a guy. It's just Deebo. So you have to keep him. And now he knows that he can run his offense in a particular way. And Deebo Samuel was frustrated with the 49ers for running him so much because it was borderline insane. Like it was like, okay, weeks like 7 through 15, it was like, oh, Deebo getting a little bit of carries. And it was like week 16 through 18, you were like, oh my gosh, Deebo Samuel's a running back. Like this dude put him out that wide receiver a little bit. And he was kind of frustrated. He was like, man, I'm a wide receiver, play me out like a wide receiver. My favorite part about the deal was the incentives for running the ball. Rushing yards and rushing touchdowns. I thought that was great because it's like now when he's running the ball, he knows that he's at least getting some sort of financial advantage. And unlike Kyler Murray, he's not going to cry to the press and be like, oh, they had to pay me to play running back. Because he's all crying about how he has to do homework and he got out of it. But
dude, that is so funny.
I know. It's hilarious to me. But Deebo Samuel is in the perfect spot. Shanahan has the perfect guy. And Kittle has the perfect guy as well. Because you're going to be tired if you're a linebacker or a safety and you're playing the Niners. You're going to be exhausted.
Dude, and the thing
is... And then Trent Williams, he pulled and he leveled you as a linebacker. Even worse. Even worse.
Dude, if you don't have a good linebacking core, you're going to get cooked. That's the thing. Like, the Niners are going to lose games. Like, they definitely are. They're going to have some flaws. But if you're like if their ability to get outside and really run the ball well outside is going to be phenomenal.
Think Packers in the playoffs 2 years ago.
I want to show one thing with Deebo Samuel, because I think when we are looking at this contract, I think that one thing that could get brought up, and I think it's fair. I think it's fair if you haven't been super locked into the Niners to be like, why would they want to pay a guy $24 million a year that's only done it 1 year, right? Okay. Counterpoint. 1, he did it as good as anyone last year. Two, his second year when he was on the field, he looked phenomenal. He looked great, right? He was sick. He had like a game where he had 13 catches, like 150 yards against the Rams with Nick Mullins, and they beat the Rams. And the Rams were good. Rams were a good team. And they just didn't have a quarterback, and he was hurt for the majority of the time. But if you go back to his rookie season when the Niners went to the Super Bowl, I'm going to pull it up right now. It was really, really crazy because he was the guy in the second half of the season, and I think a lot of people forget that. So let's look. And I know I have Sleeper up here, but look, he comes out. They have their bye, right? He gets a little banged up right here. Then starting Carolina, look at these numbers, dude. Now, Carolina wasn't that crazy. Oh, he had a touchdown. I think he ran a touchdown in, right? He's getting like all of a sudden he starts getting volume 19 to like in fantasy points. Like he's putting up numbers 130. These are good numbers, and he was doing this throughout the whole playoffs as well. He had a monster play in the Packers game. He was a guy that in the Super Bowl he started out the game and I think he got the ball the first play of the game and he got like 20-30 yards. Like he was one of their key offensive pieces, and that was during a second half where the offense drastically improved that year because it was all about the defense that year, right? They had a sweet defense. But their offense drastically improved, and in the second half of the season and during the playoffs, he was one of the guys that was getting the ball a lot in critical spots. So he's been doing it since the second half of his rookie year, and unfortunately, he missed last year 2 years ago to injury. But when he's been healthy, when he's been on the field, outside of like the first like 6 weeks of his career when he's catching up to speed, he has been good the whole time. That's the thing. So I think that's something that gets brought up, and I think it's super fair, but it's just not really true if you've really been locked into the Niners. But yeah, that's probably all I got on Deebo. You got me really excited for the season. We got to do a bunch of Niners topics today. But it has been fun. I know I'm going to be on tomorrow again. We're going to do a trade deadline thing at 4:00. I'll probably post that soon here. But anything else you want to talk about before we probably dip out?
I want to add on to Deebo. He only did it 1 year. And I get Matt, you brought up he was really good the other years. I completely agree with that. But so, you don't think the Bills would extend Josh Allen after his third year if they could have? Like if you make a jump, you make a jump. It was not some fluke season where it was like, oh, it's like, okay, horrible quarterback, and he's doing everything. I don't know of a fluke season from a player where they carried their team to the NFC Championship game as a wide receiver, and then all of a sudden it's just like, no, he's not good. It's not like you're paying him $40 million a year. Like you're paying him, $23 million a year, which is average for that group of wide receivers. And you're actually contending with him. Yeah, the Seahawks are paying DK Metcalf about the same amount of money, but they are not contending this year. They will not be contending next year. They probably won't be contending the year after that, so it doesn't make that much of a difference. Niners are going to be contending with him, and they have a quarterback that can grow with him and grow with that system, and it's going to be really scary for years to come. The Deebo Samuel move was great. It's perfect for both sides, and I don't think that there's a better match in the NFL than the trio or the quartet of Kyle Shanahan, George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and Trent Williams. There's not better. You cannot get better than those four.
You forgot one other guy, dude. You have to throw him into the group. Juice. You got to throw in Juice, Chet.
Yeah, 5 guys. I mean, you can throw in 5 guys right there. That's better than burgers and fries, right? That's pancakes on Sundays. That was really stupid. But guys, thank you so much for coming through. We try and do a show every Monday talking about the NFL, but we talked about the Hader news at the beginning of the show because San Diego related news. We try and talk about it. I'll be back on Wednesday and I'll be talking about the NBA. I'll be doing a little bit of a short bio talking about Bill Russell and his career and his life after basketball, before basketball, everything like that. I used to do historical NFL videos, so I actually have experience doing it, so don't worry about that. I'm not just some random person, but it should be a lot of fun. Excited for the Hall of Fame game that's coming this Thursday. Excited for preseason next week, which is crazy. But thank you everybody for coming through. Subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. We post all of these segments, after they go live. Last week was kind of a test run. This week, this is full throttle. We're working on setting up all the social medias. Those should be set up by the end of the week, posting the clips and everything like that. we'll see.
Well, TikTok will have set up for sure.
The main social medias should be a lot of fun. But thank you everybody for coming through, and we'll see all of you again next time.
Also, I will be going live tomorrow, 4:00, and we'll be trade deadline. Last thing.